Hey, welcome to the show. And this is a big one. James Michael, producer, songwriter, and of course, the singer of Sixx A.M. is here. And we're going to cover a lot of things. We discuss his journey from arriving to LA at age 19 to becoming co-writer with Nikki Sixx and then a hit producer, and how he finally got his first hit as a musician with Sixx A.M. at age 40. Plus, he tells me about his upcoming solo record, the process of songwriting, the chemistry behind Sixx A.M., and so much more. So real quick, before we get started, if you haven't already, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. James Michael coming right up. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way. I didn't realize, I was like very grateful that you chose to do this. But then when I went to go look and listen to some of your other interviews, I was like, oh, this guy doesn't do a lot of interviews. Like I like hit the golden goose here. I'm like, this is like a rarity.
I go through spurts of doing interviews when Sixx AM is in the process of releasing music. But other than that, I'm pretty private. I don't tend to venture out too much from my little cave here.
Yeah, that's what I heard you say, like a quote, like where you like people, but you seldom see them or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah. So, if we could just go through your whole story, is so fascinating to me. Just your whole background, and I didn't realize that you kind of grew up with that scene in the '80s. Like you had moved to LA at 19 to be a rock star, and you were there in 1987.
Yeah, I moved out shortly. I went to college for a couple of years in Chicago, and I studied music theory there, and very quickly realized that that was not going to be the path that inspired me and that really captured my imagination. So I took the plunge. I loaded up my car and drove out to Los Angeles and immediately immersed myself in the music scene out here. And yeah, so I've been out here a long time and really been working at it for a long time. The interesting thing about the way my journey has been is that, I did really initially want to be a rock star when I was a kid. So that was my main goal: get out to LA, get in a band, get famous, and live the life. But very quickly when I got out here, I realized not only the challenges of having something like that happen to you, and the likelihood is so slim that you're going to ever achieve those type of things. So I immediately started focusing more on music production, engineering, mixing, songwriting, all of the other things that I might be able to control the outcome a little bit more of. And so I ended up having a very diverse career that really, I feel like I've had 4 or 5 different careers: the career as a music engineer, the career as a mixer, the career as a producer, the career as a songwriter, and then later on in life I got to add Rockstar to that. So it's been an interesting journey.
Right. But so if we go back, because you were initially in some bands, I think in Michigan, like The Way We Dress and Night Shift. And then what was the band, The Last Americans? Was that your first band when you got to LA?
I was actually in San Francisco.
Okay.
It was a great band. It was a kind of a heavy rock band, a little bit southern rock, inspired by the likes of the Black Crowes and some other bands that really had that sound. So I was the lead singer of that band and the main songwriter in that band, and it was a lot of fun. It's where I kind of added the rock sound to my voice, because if you were to listen to that band versus even Sixx AM or some of my solo stuff, each one of them, my voice sounds very different. And that was very intentional. I've always been a bit of a chameleon when it comes to vocalizing. So when I was in The Last Americans, it was a very heavy kind of bluesy rock sound. And I tap into that every once in a while in Sixx AM and with some of my solo stuff, but it was a unique band all to itself.
So were you in any of like the hair? I mean, because this is '80s LA. Was this when you were like working at Red Lobster and you're in these like shitty bands? What were these shitty bands? I want to know about the. I think this
Oh,
stuff is fun.
okay, yeah, that was fun. That was when I first got out to LA, and I was a host at Red Lobster. That was my job to make money. I loved that job. I loved all the people I worked with and stuff. But during that time is when I was first starting to meet other musicians in Los Angeles, and anything that interested me even remotely, I would join that band and play with them. And so I was in several bands, none of which ever turned into anything, but they were all great experiences. And I learned how to be a band member
Mm.
during that time, and also learned just how tough this business was, and what a steep mountain it was going to be for me to climb. So in certain ways, being in those early bands really inspired me, and probably also gave me a dose of reality, and maybe discouraged me in certain ways too, so that I was aware of the fact that if I only had that one dream, that one plan of just being in a band or being an artist, my chances got much smaller of having any success. And that's when I kind of learned to diversify and really focus on several different aspects of what my skills allowed me to do.
So did you at least make connections through these bands, like playing shows and playing with some of these members? I don't know if they ever went on to do anything else, or I mean, because how did you must have been able to network a little bit during this time, right?
You know, I think I was too naive to really understand the concept of networking and what the value of networking would have been. So I was just kind of a satellite bouncing around from
Hmm.
one star to another, and just kind of trying to figure out my way. It wasn't until I had spent a few years in Los Angeles, really just trying everything I possibly could, that I started to kind of hone my skills and realize, okay, if I'm going to make a living in this business, um, I've got to I've got to start thinking of this as a business, and that's when I started focusing more on my skills that could get me practical jobs versus that dream of being a rock star, which just seemed so elusive, and really there was no roadmap to that, but there were roadmaps to these other channels of income. So I just started following those, and I started doing things like joining songwriter communities and things like that, anywhere where I could, as you mentioned, I could start networking. But I spent the first few years there just kind of bouncing around and not really using it to my advantage before I realized, oh, I've got to get more organized about this. I've got to come up with a plan, and that plan kind of meant putting those dreams of rock stardom not necessarily on the back burner, but just over to the side a little bit, so that I could start, you know, using my skills as a recording engineer to get some jobs at studios. And then maybe at those studios, I would meet artists as they were coming in. And eventually I'd be in sessions with artists that were more established. And that really proved to be the right way for me to go, was to just be willing to take on jobs, whether I was just doing some Pro Tools editing, or whether I was engineering, or whether I didn't really start mixing until later, but taking any gig that I could where there was the potential that more established, successful artists were there, and I could start to network with them.
So when you look back on your early attempt at being a rock star musician, what do you think went wrong? Because I mean, especially in the '80s, I look at a lot of those bands, it was all about the look. I mean, I don't know what you looked like then, but now I look at you, you got the look, you clearly have the sound. I mean, unless your voice wasn't good then and it got better somehow. So what do you think went wrong? I mean, is it just that competitive?
You know, that's a good question, and I would rephrase it a little bit. I don't want to say anything went wrong, because that gives the impression that there were things I could have done back then that maybe I didn't. Now that
Hmm.
could be the case, but the reality is that this is a very, very hard business to get established in. So when somebody is trying in trying everything they know how to do to have success, and it doesn't happen, it doesn't necessarily mean that something went wrong. It just means, man, you have chosen one of the steepest mountains to climb, and no, you could do everything right and still just never have that lucky break that it requires. And everyone at some point, every artist that's ever made it, every rock star, every pop star, at some point they have gotten lucky, and at that point where they got lucky, they had done all of the preparation that needed to be done leading up to that moment of luck. Um, and and that's how careers end up getting made, by these by incredible preparation, determination, tenacity, and then those moments of luck. So I don't think anything went wrong for me back then. I just, I probably, well, I know that I wasn't ready. In fact, when I finally did get my first record deal, which I think was in '99, it was a solo record deal, and we put out a record called Inhale, that was a pretty critically acclaimed record, but commercially it was not a success. Um, but at that point, I really, that's when I realized that it was, I was going to have to do everything I possibly could to keep this career moving forward. But I was going to depend on a lucky break at some point. And it wasn't until I had signed that first record deal, that I started really meeting other musicians, other successful artists. I happened to be on the same label with Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, who had a sub label at this record label that I was at called Beyond Music, and they had Motley Records, which was kind of attached to Beyond. So that's really where my first introduction to Nikki happened, and we became friends just because we'd pass each other in the halls of the record label. And one day he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I heard your solo record. I really like your writing. Would you be interested in doing some writing for Motley Crue?" And of course, I said, absolutely. And that was really one of my first introductions into legitimately writing for a legitimately signed and successful band. But that was many, many years after I had been struggling in Los Angeles, just trying to find that right avenue. So again, back to your question, I don't know that anything went wrong back then. It's just I just hadn't had my moments of luck yet.
Mm-hmm. It's just crazy. Yeah, it took 13 years, but you kept going. Like, was there ever a time where you thought, oh, maybe I should try something else? Or was it just because I guess you were doing the engineering and stuff to pay the bills, so you're still around music?
Yeah, I was still around music, but yes, I had many of those moments where I just thought, this just isn't working for me. I'm 25, and now I'm 28, and it's still not happening. And now I'm 30, and it's not happening. And do you know that I did not have my first hit song as an artist until I was 40 years old? Um, which means that from the time that I moved out to Los Angeles when I was around 19 till 40 years old, that was all just this constant grind and this constant struggle, and having moments of success and moments of luck and moments where it looked like things were heading in the right direction, and then complete disappointments where they ended up not panning out. You know, so yeah, it took me a long, long time to realize that initial dream that brought me out to Los Angeles in the first place.
Yeah, and didn't you? I mean, you got really hyper focused on being a songwriter. I think, didn't you say you lost some relationships and some friendships because of that?
Yeah, there was a point, which goes back to your question of did I ever consider giving it up. There was a point where I did really say, all right, the artist thing isn't going to happen for me. I had spent years sending out demo tapes, and was constantly being discouraged, and basically say, people would tell me, you just don't have the voice for it. You don't
Hmm.
that your songs aren't there. We don't hear you as an artist. We know that you're a songwriter. We know that you're able to write songs, but we don't hear you as the guy to perform those songs. I got a lot of that.
Hmm.
Um, and sorry, I got to turn off my phone here. And that was very discouraging and disheartening. And so at a certain point, I'm not sure what age I was, but I took that to heart, and I thought, maybe I need to listen to this. If I just keep on going down this road, I could end up being 40 and having nothing happening. And so I really took a shift and focused. I gave up the idea of being an artist, and I just really focused on songwriting. And during that time, I signed my first publishing deal. I started to see some success. I started to be like, okay, this songwriting thing could really pay off for me, and it did. And so I spent years just doing that and being very content and feeling very successful, and feeling appreciated because I was getting a lot of cuts. I was writing for a lot of different artists. Um, and then maybe 5 or 6 years into that, and by that time Nikki Sixx and I had become very good friends, and we'd written a lot of songs together, both for Motley Crue and for other artists. And we started just toying with this idea um, of taking these diaries that he had written and turning them into a movie, and then he and I should make the soundtrack to that movie. And we really loved that idea, but it was but we kind of came up with that idea, and then just didn't really follow through on it for a couple of years. We both kind of went our own ways. He got really busy doing Motley Crue, and I was just really, really busy doing other songwriting gigs. And then one day he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, you remember that idea that we had to kind of do a soundtrack to my diaries and stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, we loved that idea. Why didn't we do anything with it?" He says, "Well, I found our guitar player. His name's DJ Ashba, and I think that the three of us should get together and really explore that idea." And at the time, I was actually deep in production. I was producing a Scorpions record at the time, and I said, I'm really in the throes of this record right now, but I love the idea of us all getting together. When I'm done with the Scorpions, I'll come out to your place. The three of us can sit down and see if we have any chemistry. So I did that. I finished the Scorpions record, went out to his studio and met DJ and him, and we immediately, like within minutes, were writing songs together. We all picked up instruments and started playing. We're like, whoa, this feels different. This feels really cool. It was amazing to have somebody as incredible as DJ on the guitars, and it was just neat to hear all of these different ideas being thrown around. I wasn't used to that. I'd been doing a lot of co-writing with people, but not with other artists like this, and so we very quickly realized we got to keep doing this. And that was the beginning of Sixx AM. It was probably a matter of a month or two of us repeating that, getting together and writing, that we had recorded Life is Beautiful and a few other songs. So it's been an interesting journey, and it really, it was unexpected. By the time that Sixx AM happened, I had, completely given up on the dream of being a rock star. And it was just really another one of those moments that, looking back on it now, I'm like, my God, that meeting that we had, that first day that we got together, changed the trajectory of my life so dramatically, because then for the next 10 years, Sixx AM really dominated everything that I was doing, because I ended up producing and mixing the album. So it was a huge workload for me. So I actually ended up having to put all of that other stuff, the entire other careers that I had been building as an engineer and as a songwriter and producer, I kind of had to put those on hold and focus completely on Sixx AM. So, but again, that really didn't happen until my late 30s. And like I said, our first song, when Life is Beautiful became a hit, I was 40 years old. And it was the first time as an artist that I was experiencing that kind of success.
Yeah. So how did Nikki find DJ? Because I know DJ was in, I think he was in Bullet Boys and then Beautiful Creatures. Did he see him in Beautiful Creatures, or was it something else he was doing?
No, they actually met. I love the story. They actually met at a funeral, which is very appropriate for Sixx AM and our entire lineage. But they met at Randy Castillo, the drummer's funeral.
Yeah.
And DJ and I had met before. We had crossed paths in recording studios and stuff like that. So the three of us did know each other. It was more like we knew of each other more than we knew each other. But that changed quickly. You know, we instantly became very, very close friends.
Yeah. And you were not originally supposed to be the singer. You were just going to be the songwriter. Did you guys try out any other, can you say what other singers you guys tried out or looked at, or?
Well, here's the thing. We never actually tried out any singers, at least not to my knowledge. Who knows? Maybe Nikki and DJ did. But yes, my involvement was supposed to be writing the songs with them and producing and mixing it. And because it wasn't supposed to be a band, this was just supposed to be a soundtrack to this book.
Right.
So the idea was going to be that we'd get the songs written, we'd get them recorded, and then we'd audition a singer to come in and just lay their vocals over the top of everything that we'd already built up sonically. But the issue became that because I, even though I don't really fancy myself as a singer, I vocalize and I do my best to make things sound good that I am singing. And I have a pretty big range. I have a larger range than most male tenors have in the rock world, at least. I should qualify that. I didn't realize how difficult it would be to find somebody else to sing these songs because of that range. So we did reach a point when we were starting to talk about, okay, we gotta audition people, and it became clear very quickly that finding somebody to really, hit those notes and do it the way that I had done it was going to be a challenge and may set us back, much further. It may take a lot longer. So at some point, Nikki and DJ just said, "Hey, would you mind if we just kept your voice on these songs for the time being, and we'll put out a song and just see what happens." So they put out Life is Beautiful, and it just very, very quickly started climbing the charts. Well, at that point, I'm locked in because, it's going to be difficult now once we've had a song on the radio to replace the vocals on it. So I kind of reluctantly became the actual lead singer of Sixx AM. It was never my intention. I remember at some point saying, "Yeah, I guess that's okay. You can leave my voice on the first couple of songs, and then we'll find somebody to sing the rest of them later." And then a couple of months later, the record label called and said, "Hey, Life is Beautiful is turning into a hit song. We need to shoot a video for it. Would you mind also being in the video?" I'm like, "Okay, I'll be in the video, but this I'm just going to do the one video, and then we'll find another singer." I was still convinced that we'd find another singer for the band at some point, but literally that's just how it kept on unfolding. It just was like, okay, well, now we're releasing another song, kept my voice on it, and before you know it, we put the record out, and it all had my voice on it, and that's how I became the singer of the band. It was never supposed to happen.
That's so funny. You tried so hard to be a singer, and then it couldn't happen, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to be a songwriter. You're trying not to be the singer, and then you do. It's like, it's so interesting.
That's right, Chuck. What was interesting about it is because of all of the frustrations that I had experienced earlier on when I was trying to be a singer, I really made a very heartfelt and committed decision to not do that anymore and just focus on the writing and the producing and be a behind the scenes guy. And I loved it. I loved the idea. I I was writing songs for all of these different artists, and then I'd watch those artists go out and have to tour for the next year or 2 years, be away from home, be away from their families, and they were out there playing my songs, and I was sitting at home collecting checks. And I was like, this is so much easier. If I just sit home
Yeah.
write with all these different artists, let them go out and do all of the difficult tasks of promoting their albums and stuff,
Yeah.
and I can sit back and collect the checks. And that's really how it went for a long time. So by the time Sixx AM came around, my life as a songwriter and producer was pretty appealing already. So that's why it became a bit more of, arm twisting to get me to actually commit to being in the band. And you know what, it was one of the best decisions I ever made, because I have had such a blast being the lead singer of Sixx AM and the producer of Sixx AM, and a founding member of the band. It's been such an amazing journey, and the experiences that I've had, it's just I just can't imagine now not having done that and missed out on all of the wonderful experiences I've had throughout the years.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, I think Sixx AM beat a lot of the odds too in just being so successful. Like, you guys obviously were surprised that Life is Beautiful, I mean, hit #2 on the rock charts. But I mean, I think before that, if you had said, okay, Nikki Sixx, oh yeah, well, he's just an '80s guy, and then these two other guys, oh, we've never heard of them. This song's not going to do well, and it blows up. Like, he kind of looks like a genius in a way that he discovered you, and he basically discovered DJ Ashba, and both of your careers took off because of this.
You're right, and I think that therein lies one of the very genius things about Nicky, is that he just has an amazing vision, no matter what it
Mhm.
is that he is pursuing. Um, that's something that I've really enjoyed about working with him, is his sense of imagination is huge and it's inspiring. And that's been a real fun part of this whole process. But the other thing is, that, you know, people would very easily assume, because of that he is guiding the way for Sixx AM. And I think he'd be the first one to tell you that Sixx AM is absolutely a collaborative effort. It is
Hmm.
a democracy through and through. And those songs and those experiences are all of ours. They are DJ's, they are mine, they are they're shared stories. And that's what has been so special to us about Sixx AM. There was always the potential for it to be very different because of who Nicky was, but he didn't want it that way either. He wanted this to be a band, and he wanted this to be a collaboration. And I think um, that's why the albums were so special and so unique, and so different from other bands that were making music at the time.
Yeah, and you guys get along really well, right? Like, talk about that. How you guys, if you have a fight, nobody holds a grudge. It's over in 5 minutes. I
Yeah,
love that.
you know, we we're like any band. We have our moments that you think, oh, this isn't going to last much longer because we're just butting heads and things like that. But we also have been through so much together as friends over the years. Really shared a lot of very personal experiences together. I remember when Nikki and I both went through divorces at the same time, and we were sleeping on each other's couches, and just, really just trying to make sense of lives that had fallen apart. So we've been through so much stuff together, that I think that those experiences and that friendship that was forged because of that will always override any political differences we have musically or business wise or band wise. Yeah, we get along great, and we all respect each other. And like I said, we've had our moments. We've had moments where we haven't spoken for 6 months because we were angry with one another for something. But you know, you get to this point in life and you look back on those things and you go, boy, what that was just such wasted time.
Hmm.
I would say that we get along better now than we ever have. We have such a deep respect for each other's lives and and what this experience is like for each of us. It's a strange experience to be in the music business and to kind of, I mean, if my experience has been strange, I can only imagine what Nikki's has been like being, world famous since he was 19 years old.
Hmm.
So when you understand that, you realize that that is quite a burden to carry around with you. It is something that has to be dealt with every day. People's perception of being a rock star like Nikki are probably very inaccurate. It seems very luxurious and fun, but I would say that most people that reach that level would tell you, at least a majority of the time, it feels like a burden, or it feels like such a heavy responsibility, and you have to become good at dealing with that. My former manager and best friend, who passed away several years ago, said to me once, he said, the difference between being a superstar and being a very talented person, as he said, a very talented person has talent. A superstar has talent for being talented. And it
Hmm.
didn't make sense to me at the
Hmm.
time. But after getting to know Nikki, I really grew to understand the gravity of that comment. Nikki is very good at being a successful artist. He handles it very gracefully. And so DJ and I were very lucky to be in a band with him and be able to see that, to see him set that example. Um, and I think that that's something that I've always been just incredibly impressed by Nikki. He's very good at being Nikki Sixx, and you can't say that for a lot of people that have reached that level of fame. A lot of people uh, stumble over it. Not that he hasn't stumbled, but a lot of people stumble over that burden more often than not.
Well, yeah, and let's talk about you, because you said that that was the hardest part about being in Sixx AM was the public persona. That felt uncomfortable to you. You're more, like you said at the beginning, you're more of a private person, so you felt like you were playing a character. Explain that to me.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's that uncommon. I think that even Nikki would tell you he plays a bit of a character, because the Nikki Sixx that is, at home with his wife and his kids and his dogs is considerably different than the Nikki Sixx that goes out and does press, conferences, or that goes out and does meet and greets, or goes out and performs to 80,000 people like he's doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so um, yeah, so I found that it was easier for me to kind of create this character and then step into it when necessary, and that helped me really keep a healthy perspective between any successes that I have or any notoriety that I have. And thankfully, my notoriety was very limited compared to that of both DJ and Nikki, because that's, like you were saying, I'm much more comfortable behind the scenes. But I do enjoy from time to time stepping into that character and going out and getting to, play that role, because it's a super fun role to play.
I bet being on stage, I mean, that's got to be the best adrenaline high that you could get.
It really is. It is. You've heard it. Everyone's heard it. Kind of compared to a drug or an addiction. But boy, I'll tell you what, when you step out on stage in front of 10, 15, 20, 80,000 people, and they're all singing the words to you that you wrote right here in this room, um, there is a there is a gosh, I don't want to use this word, but there is a godliness to it that is terrifying, because it's so enticing, because it is so addictive. Um, and when you feel like you have that audience in the palm of your hand, I've just never experienced any other feeling like that. And that's what keeps people coming back. It's like, they say in golf is so difficult until you hit that one perfect shot. And then you hit that perfect shot and you're like, oh my God, that's the one shot that keeps you coming back for years to come. That's the way it is when you step out on stage and you feel that feeling, boy, that'll keep you coming back as long as they'll have you.
Interesting. That's a really good way to look at it. Yeah, because you see that with a lot of artists that like, why is this person still touring? They've got millions of dollars. They can just retire, but they just really love performing.
Yeah, that connection to the audience is magical. It is magical.
Yeah. And then on the same hand, you see a lot of people chasing it. If they had that, 20,000 people singing along and then their career goes a different way and then they lose it, man, they're still trying to get back to that. That must be frustrating. Maybe that's why there's so many issues with rock stars struggling with drugs and alcohol, mental health, and all that stuff.
I think you're right, Chuck. It's a real issue for people when they have that kind of experience, and I think that that's one of the reasons, because I had such a long career working with artists like that before any of that happened to me. I saw them going through that, and I learned very quickly. Okay, this is something to be cautious about. If I were ever to have that opportunity, you need to I need to approach that cautiously, because I can see myself getting addicted to that very quickly. So I always, even when things started to blow up for Sixx AM and we were starting to have success and I was starting to experience those little moments of fame, um, I made sure to never really think of it as reality. I always thought, okay, you're playing a character. This is not real. What the audience is feeling is real. What you're giving to them is real. But this understanding that you and the audience have is not real. It's make believe, and that's how I always looked at it, so that I never let it get to my head or let it confuse me. And now I'm grateful for that, because I've had that experience, but I also, it made me realize just how much I love my privacy and my personal life, and how important that is to me. The last few years have especially made that crystal clear to me, because I intentionally took a step back from Sixx AM and from music altogether, and really just focused on my family and my personal life. And only recently have I been back in the studio making new music. So yeah, it's all been very interesting. But I'm really grateful, just to finish up this particular conversation. I'm really grateful that both of my bandmates are much more famous than I am, because it really took the burden off of me, and it allowed me to do this comfortably.
Huh. And so how is like, because you say you kind of play a character. How is the character that you're playing on stage different than the real you? Or are they becoming more connected?
Well, they do become connected. You need them to be connected, otherwise it's just going to be disingenuous. So they're definitely connected. I think when I say character, I think I just get to, when I step into that role, I just get to believe the hype a little bit more. I get to kind of buy into the fantasy a little bit more, just have fun with it, and maybe be a little bit cockier, because I think a certain amount of cockiness is needed to be able to get out and do that. And you know, it's a really good question. I think they're very similar. Those two people, myself and the character, are very similar. Maybe the character is there just to protect me from any invasive things. Any time where I feel like my privacy is being punctured, then I kind of use it as a mask, or as a kind of a bubble to keep my personal life protected.
Yeah, how do you deal with that? Because I know, like you said, I mean, obviously you don't have the level of world famous Nikki Sixx fame, but you have a lot of followers on Instagram, for that's worth, and you have a level of fame. So how do you deal with super fans or stalkers or people that come out of the woodwork? Hey, remember we were best friends in high school? Like, remember, like, but they're just trying to like use you basically.
Yeah. I just try to be as genuine as I can in any of those situations. I think most fans that meet me um, are probably surprised at the lack of bravado and you know they I usually hear people say, God, you're just kind of like normal, you know. And I take that as a compliment because I am. And you know what? Nikki's normal and DJ's normal. We're all just normal dudes that have
Mhm.
just gotten super, super lucky after working extremely hard. But you know, I think that sometimes fans imagine a band like Sixx AM that we're just always together and we're always hanging out. And whenever we're together, we're just talking about music. But we so seldom ever talk about music when we're together because there's just so much other stuff about life to talk about. And I find Nikki and DJ, the people, far more interesting than their personas, you know, and I think they would say the same about me. So we just, you
Hmm.
know, we yeah, we just try to always just set that aside and be as normal as we can be, and I find that the most natural. So when I'm meeting with fans or talking with fans, I just very quickly try to erase any of that kind of preconception and just have a normal conversation like we're having right now.
Yeah, I love it. So when you talk to Nikki and DJ, I mean, can I, without, I don't want to get you in trouble, but can you say any of the things that, I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall of these conversations. Can you have like deep philosophical conversations with Nikki Sixx? I mean,
Oh
that
my God,
sounds amazing.
that's about all we ever do. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we that's one of the things that's why there's such a chemistry between the three of us, is that that's where we instinctively go. We go deep,
I love it.
and we and you know, we don't take anything about our friendship for granted, and we appreciate the safe space that our friendships allow us. And oh yeah, we from the very beginning we have just always gone deep, and I think that that's why it just seems so natural that we should be writing songs about very deep, heavy, personal things. So that part of it is you know, that part of it plays out both in our personal private lives and in our, you know, business lives where we're creating music.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, that makes sense because the music is, I mean, I love Motley Crue. They're one of my favorite bands, but this is so different. It's much deeper. It's much more mature songwriting. So what other kinds of things inspire that kind of songwriting? Like, is there certain, like, you read a lot of books, of philosophy books, or like novels, or I don't know, what, or art that inspires you?
That's a good question. The first thing, the first word that I would use to describe all three of us would be we are observers. We're observers of life, and I think that you have to be in any situation. I'm constantly just fascinated by human nature, and I know Nikki and DJ both are as well. So that immediately sets you up to be able to then, you know, create narrations about your observations, and that's what songwriting is. At least that's what songwriting is for us. So we always tend to you know, when we're observing life, we tend to try to find the most beautiful thing and the darkest thing, and by finding both of those, then you've got all the material that you need to create Sixx AM music, because Sixx AM music has always been about just walking that fine line, or doing that very, very specific dance between beauty and ugliness. And that's how I would describe Sixx AM music and Sixx AM lyrics is just walking that fine line between beauty and darkness.
I love it. And I think you said your favorite album is Modern Vintage. I think that's my favorite too. I know it kind of took a little bit of a different turn, but I think Stars is a masterpiece. I think Gotta Get It Right is just, it's so melodic. So in terms of like, you know, you talk about the inspiration with more, I guess you're more lyrics, but in terms of making it sound good, because I feel like that's what, you know, is a big part of music is the sound, the melody, and all those kinds of things. Is that something that you developed over all these years of writing, or is there a process that you do to make it sound good?
You mean the sonics of Sixx AM, the
Well,
way
like
that?
the song, the music, like the I don't know what you call it. I'm not a music guy. I just know it sounds good. Like the chorus and the verses, like it's catchy. Like what your newest song that you guys have, the first 21, so catchy. I'm like, oh, this is such a catchy. So I like the a little bit of poppier stuff that
Yeah,
I can sing along to. I mean, nothing against some of the heavier bands, but you know, I like to be able to sing along to. I like to hear the melody and stuff. So how do you figure that out without? Also, you got to be original too, right? You don't want to be ripping off another band.
that's right. That's right. Well, I first off, I think that, and I think Nikki and DJ would both agree with this, that we write pop songs. It's just, we all write pop songs. It's just how you present them is what will make it a metal song
Mhm.
or a hard rock song or a country song or a, whatever. I think that it's the way that you treat it once it's written. So from that respect, we've always put a lot of focus on good hooks and good kind of pop hooks, memorable things, and then it just kind of comes down to um, what inspires us as a music producer, which is what I always kind of think my main gig is figuring that question out. How do I make this sound? Okay, we've got this great song. How do I make it sound? Are we going to lean this one a little bit heavier, or are we going to go a little bit more pop? Back to Modern Vintage, when we sat down and started writing Modern Vintage, we set out to make a very different sounding record. That was our intention. We knew we were going to be pissing off some fans because anytime that you make that dramatic of a shift, some people are going to get uncomfortable with it. But the thing about Sixx AM that we've always done is we've done our best to take the fans on a journey, but never abandon them, never leave them somewhere stranded musically where they didn't know how to get back to, so we always kind of will bring it back around to that heavy, darker Sixx AM sound. But on Modern Vintage, for instance, we really pushed the envelope and we really did some things that we knew some of our fans weren't necessarily going to like. Our hope was that maybe they would um, find some things on the record that they did enjoy, and then years later come back to it and be like, okay, I think I might be a little more open to Gotta Get It Right. I
Mhm.
hated Gotta Get It Right when it came out, but now I kind of like it. I've heard that from people before.
Hmm.
In fact, when we released Gotta Get It Right, um, it didn't do very well at radio at all. But
Hmm.
interestingly enough, we performed it live, and every time we performed it, the crowd went crazy. So it was just one of those
Hmm.
songs that maybe the timing wasn't right for it. Maybe it was a little too soon to lean in that pop direction. But that's kind of what I love about it. And you mentioned Stars. Stars is one of my favorite Sixx AM songs ever. So I
Me
was
too.
I was very pleased that song can live on the same album with a song like "Gotta Get It Right" and not be too much of a sore thumb. So it was a lot of fun putting that record together because it was challenging because we knew we were pushing the envelope and we knew that it wasn't going to be received well by everybody.
Mhm.
But I think as it has as the years have progressed, I think it's held up well, and I think it's still the album I'm probably the most proud of because of the chances we took on it.
Yeah, I love it. Is now how come I've always wondered this? How come you guys never made a drummer a permanent member of the band?
Probably because for the first 5 or 6 years of our career, we literally would make a point of saying we're not a band. We're
Okay.
just three
Just a
guys.
project.
Yeah, we're just three guys that got together and made some music and got lucky and enjoyed it enough that we kept on doing it. But I think that early on, had we hired a drummer permanently, that would have been admitting that we are a band, and I think that we all were a little reluctant to
Hmm.
do that. But once and we've had some great drummers. Jeff Fab was just wonderful. I believe he drummed on Modern Vintage, and just love him to death. I still communicate with him all the time. He's out with Black Label Society now, and has been for many years. Um, but when Dustin
You froze.
Rest and Prayers for the
Oh, there you
Damned. When Dustin joined the band, I think that's when we really started going, you know what, we are a band. He really rounded it out. And when I think of Sixx AM, of course, I think of the core, the three of us, and the friendship and all of that. But when I think of Sixx AM, the band, I definitely think of Dustin as part of that. Uh, and he's been doing great. He's got two kids now. He was out with Shinedown.
go.
Uh, Barry Shinedown's drummer. When he got COVID, they asked Dustin to join him, and so he went out on tour with them and played drums for Shinedown for a while. And he's also just a dear friend, and just grateful that we got to make a couple of records together and tour the world together. But to answer your question, I think if we ever made it a fit
Oops, you froze
to
again.
us, that would have been admitting that we were a band, and I think we probably just avoided that.
Okay, so is there a future for Sixx AM? Is there going to be a new record or a new tour at some point, or are you still on a hiatus?
We're on hiatus. We don't have any plans right now. I'm communicating quite regularly with both Nikki and DJ, and we all have some other creative projects that we are doing together or will do together. And I don't know. I don't know if Sixx AM will do another record. Now I think I would really love that if we did. And to be honest with you, I think probably Nikki and DJ feel the same. So we'll just have to see. It's certainly not off the table, but it just depends on where we're at in our lives and if we feel that it's something to pursue.
So there's no plans, though. There's no like, okay, we're going to start writing this month.
No,
Or
we have no plans. In fact, I'm getting ready to release some music. I'm going to be releasing some music in September. I've been back in the studio recording, and it's really cool stuff. And I think that if you're a Sixx AM fan, I think you're gonna really like this. It doesn't sound like Sixx AM necessarily, but these songs could absolutely have been Sixx AM songs. So I'm getting really excited about putting out this music, and I think mid-September I'm gonna release the first song.
Okay, is this your solo career then, or?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not necessarily calling it that, but it's me, and I'm
Okay.
doing it myself. So I guess it is a solo thing.
Okay, who else? Like you had the actual? Is this just the demos, or is the album already done? Who plays on it?
I've got well, I'm playing all of the instruments.
Everything.
As I've done most of my life anyway.
You play the drums too, and the bass, and the everything.
Yeah, it's not that unusual for me
Huh.
to do that. I've always been that guy.
Okay.
And I'm just having a blast with it. And I really have no expectations for it other than I want to start putting out music for the fans again, because it's been a long time, and we've had a lot of people asking about Sixx AM. And while this won't be Sixx AM, I definitely think it's going to be something that Sixx AM fans really respond to.
Okay, and then will you tour for that?
I'm starting to get back in vocal shape, in vocal tour shape. I don't have any plans yet, but I just now that I'm going to be putting out music again, I want to be ready for anything. And I've been considering doing an acoustic tour for a couple of years. I've been thinking about that. Because I've been doing these little things where I'll sit down and I'll strip a rock song down to it's just piano and vocal.
Yeah, I love those.
And I've been having so much fun doing that and getting such a wonderful response from people that I thought, there may be the possibility, or it may be an idea to do, an evening of music like that, an acoustic thing, just me and a piano and maybe a couple other guest musicians. And so I'm starting to get my voice back into shape so that I can do that, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll definitely see you if you come to Phoenix. That sounds like a great show.
I'll let you know for sure.
Very cool. Yeah. So is this through your Empathic music group? Is that, you still have that? That's your record label, right?
We did. Me and a couple of my friends put that label together, and we put out a record for this artist named Sixx, who's just an amazing, amazing young talent. And literally the week that we released it, COVID hit. And it really derailed all of our plans. We had plans for him to go out and tour, and it just derailed the whole thing. which was heartbreaking for us. And in fact, Sixx is to this day he's one of my writing partners, and he co-wrote with me some of these songs that I'm getting ready to release. He's just incredibly talented, and we loved that whole process of doing that. But it was heartbreaking that it didn't happen for him or for us because of COVID. And so Empathic Music Group is just that. It was really just intended for
Okay.
that. No, I'm just putting this out myself. I'm not doing a record label or anything. I think that's one of the things that over the last few years I've realized is that the less involvement I have with record labels, the happier I am. And I don't want to say anything bad about record labels, because Sixx A.M.'s record label has been fantastic, and I love them, and I'm grateful for them. Better Noise Music, they're awesome people. They're all very talented. Alan Kovac has just been an incredible manager for the band. So I'm not dissing that, but I just find that I'm happier when I'm not having to deal so much with the business side of things.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
It allows me to just to be calmer and to enjoy being a music fan again, which is where I'm at now. For so many years, I worked so hard and was just going from one project to another, that I forgot what it meant to be a music fan, because I was just always being a music creator. And over the last few years, I've fallen in love with music again as a listener. Which is what inspired me to get back in the studio and start creating again with this new, what I think is a healthier perspective. So I'm very excited to start putting out music again, but not being so hung up on the business side of it. Just putting music. I don't want this to sound, inappropriate, but I don't need the success anymore. I've had so much wonderful success. Sure. That I'm grateful for. But what I do want to do is I want to continue connecting with fans and providing them with, I want to entertain the fans. So that's what's driven me to consider putting music out again. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
So when you started to go back and become a listener of music, or are you talking about listening to old music, or did you discover any new bands that were current bands?
Yeah, both. Okay. Really, as a music producer, it's important to stay current. So you have to listen to what's going on now, and you have to understand it, and you have to appreciate it, and hopefully love it, which I do. I love the music that's being made today, but it's very, very different than the music I cut my teeth on. And I spend most of my time now listening to old 70s and 80s playlists and just being happier than I've ever been, listening to that music, imagining what those artists went through when they were creating that music, and having an understanding of what the process is. And so I think that when I imagine what they went through, I'm probably pretty accurate in many ways. And I just love doing that, because I think that classic rock and that pop music from the 80s, I don't think that we'll ever, I don't think we'll ever have another time like that in music. Not to say that the times that we're having now aren't great, because I think music is as creative as it's ever been right now. But boy, there was something really wonderful about those old 70s and 80s pop songs.
Yeah, isn't it too? I feel like it's when you were really young, and that music, like you first hear it, it really sticks with you forever, I think. I mean, I still remember the first time, hearing like Skid Row and stuff when I was like 14. I was like, what is this? This blew my mind, so.
And I don't know, I'm going to sound so old and like an old person to say this, but I don't know if the music that is being created today will have that same lasting, effect. And it might, I don't know. Maybe 30 years from now, somebody will be sitting back reflecting on the first Justin Bieber record, which I love, by the way. Yeah. I love it. But I don't know if there will be that same connection 30 years from now. I hope there is, and he certainly deserves it because he's incredibly talented, and so are most of these young artists that are putting out music today. But it will just be interesting to see. We won't know, and that's why I have this affinity for music from my childhood.
No, I love that era too. I love, and like the early 90s I think was a really good time for rock too. I loved when it was like when grunge was coming along, but you still had the hard rock and then you had them both, and it was such a cool variety. And then it went full grunge, and then it's obviously it's changed a lot since then too, but it was a good time. Like 91, I think to me that was a great year for rock.
It was so good. Oh yeah, it was just so good.
Yeah, if you look at the albums released. Now you guys have another song, the Retaliators movie. That you guys did the theme, 21 Bullets. Is that under the Sixx AM?
It's not under Sixx AM. Nikki
Okay.
and I wrote that song. They were filming the movie and needed a theme song for it, and it just seemed like a fun challenge. So he and I got together and wrote that song. And then they got a bunch of guest artists to perform it. That was a fun one. I love that song. I think it's really the right song for that movie. So isn't it, that's an example of just other projects that we are involved in. I'm sure that DJ and I will do something together in the near future. It's just that's when you have that kind of chemistry between people, you cherish it, and you don't want to let that go because it's rare.
Sure.
And once you have it, you hold on to it for dear life.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other projects that you want to promote? We'll look forward to that solo album in September.
Yeah, that's really it. I'm
Okay.
just now starting to get back into social media. I took a long break from that, and loved every minute of the break.
Oh, I'm jealous.
I'm having fun getting back into it again, and trying to figure out how these algorithms work, and not getting too hung up on it where I get frustrated, but enjoying the process. So, I will keep you updated through social media as to when I'm releasing music, and if there are any new projects coming up, I will certainly put it out there.
Okay, so I'm assuming you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Or are you on TikTok? You put those up.
I'm on TikTok right now, and I'm loving being on TikTok because on Instagram I've got, I don't know, maybe 65,000 followers or something like that, and of course Sixx AM has more followers. But on TikTok right now, I think I've only got maybe 800 followers. So it feels really, just because I haven't promoted it, and I'm just putting some acoustic videos out on there. So I'm just getting started on it, and I'm having fun with it because it is so infant. It's just in such an infant stage that every day I'll like see, oh, I got 2 more followers. That's awesome. And
I'll follow you. I don't know if I follow you or not on there. I will follow you though, because I love those videos you're putting out with the piano. It's great.
Thank you. I'm going to be putting several more of those out. I love doing those. Yeah, my TikTok is James Michael Music. So
Okay.
it's at James Michael Music. My Instagram is James Michael Official. My Facebook is James Michael Official. My YouTube is James Michael Official. So TikTok is the only one that's James Michael Music.
Okay. And all those other ones, I think you got the blue tick so people know that's verified. So if it's somebody that says James Michael from Sixx AM and then they ask you for money, it's probably not you.
Hey, thank you for bringing that up. There's been a lot of that lately. I'm getting a lot of messages from fans saying, hey, this person has reached out to me saying they're your online manager, and they want you to they want you to, I don't know, write something or send something. And so please don't fall for any of that stuff. Those are just scammers trying to get some attention. And most of the fans realize right away, I don't reach out to people privately. I don't DM people. I'll never ask a fan for anything. I just post stuff, and that's it. And
Got it.
yeah.
Well, very cool. And then I always end each episode promoting a charity. Is there something that you want to promote here at the end in terms of a charity that's near and dear to your heart?
That's really cool. Over the last few years, I've always been an animal lover, but I've gotten 2 dogs, and they are the center of my universe. And any charity that you want to donate to that helps, like the Humane Society or the SPCA, anything like that is helping either find, forever homes for animals that are in need, or or protecting animals' rights.
Mhm.
Anything to do with that is okay by me.
Okay, I love it. Yeah, I've promoted that many, many times. So hopefully people can throw a few bucks in there. Can they pre-order your album now, or is it not?
I decided not to do pre-order stuff because it
Okay.
just felt so music businessy to me. I am literally going to pop on to social media the day before I release it and let people know that it's coming out. It's going to be mid-September. I uploaded this stuff myself. Like I said, I'm not doing a label.
Okay.
So once it's live, I'll let people know, and then I'll do the typical promotion and stuff. But yeah, it's just going to be done. I'll just alert people through social media and let them know. It's going to be middle of September.
Are you going to be doing a lot of more podcasts, or am I the only one? Hopefully.
Right now, you're the only one. I love having these conversations. So by the way, thank you for reaching out to me and asking me to do this, because I do love talking about the music business, and I love talking about creating. And and I'm sure that you've found this. The more that you speak with people, there are a lot of really wonderful people in this music industry, and a lot of them surprise you with how down to earth they are. And that's one of the things that I've been the most grateful for in my career, is that I've just met incredible human beings, both creators and fans. I've met so many amazing people, and I've always just felt like no matter who you are, no matter who the person is that you're meeting, their life is a movie just ready to be told. Whether you are whether you are a fan, or you're an agent, or you're a lawyer, or you're a musician, no matter what you do, I just find people's lives so interesting. And I think that that's why I've enjoyed being an observer of life my whole life. And that's why I enjoy doing what I do, because in some way I feel like I spend my time telling people's stories, whether they're mine or somebody else's. And I find that very rewarding.
I feel the exact same way. I feel like that's what the point of my podcast is, to tell people's stories. And you're right. Like, you meet these people. Before I started doing a podcast, I thought all these rock stars were cocky assholes. They're probably playing the character, but then you get them in person, you talk to them on Zoom or whatever, and they're very down to earth.
Yeah, 99% of the time.
99. I would say that's a good statistic. Yeah.
You're surprised by just how cool these people are. And yes, once you understand that, there's a character there, and once they step out of character and they're themselves, they're usually pretty cool people.
Yeah. Like Ann Wilson, I had her on the show. She covered your song. Have you ever met her?
Oh, yes. And I got to tell you, man, I've had a lot of kind of goosebump moments in my career where I say, I can't believe this is happening to me. Her bass player sent me a video of her performing Permission. And boy, I sent that video to my brother and to my mom and my dad and just everyone I knew, because I was so excited and I was just giddy about the fact that this incredible voice, this iconic person, was performing a song that I wrote, and it just blew my mind.
I thought that was so cool that she loves it. She told me she's a huge fan of the band, and I was like, wow, that's because you just don't think that she would be listening to that kind of music, but now she loved it, and it's great.
It's just amazing. That was one of the many just moments in my life where I just go, I can't believe this is happening to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think you give a lot of other people those kind of moments when fans meet you, and like when you do my podcast, like I have a little bit of a goosebump moment myself. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much for having me on. Let's do this again sometime.
Okay. Anytime. Yeah. Let me know.
You got it.
All right. Thanks, James.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you again to James Michael. Make sure to keep an eye out for the new studio album in mid-September. I love how there's no official release date, so I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Just make sure that you're following James on social media to stay up to date, because that's when he's going to tell you when he's going to drop it. And while you're on there, if you could, give me a follow or give the show a follow. We're all over everything. And again, I will bug you to make sure you're subscribed to the show, either on YouTube or if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I think you can subscribe there as well. I appreciate all your positive comments, reviews, likes, shares of all my episode. It means the world to me, and I'm eternally grateful. Have a great rest of your day, and shoot for the moon.